Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. What exactly is going wrong with Atlanta FaZe? After falling short to OpTic Texas in the grand finals of Major 1 and a very surprising series defeat yesterday to Seattle Surge, some still think they're the #1 team in the game. Things got pretty heated as a result. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you were new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel, thank you very much indeed for doing that. First of all, just a fantastic video of Paulex trying out some buff roll. Not a good idea, I might advise. His face honestly when he does this is a picture, to be honest. Look at this, fantastic scenes. So anyway, he was having a good time. He did a great job summing in for London. Of course, I believe Gizmo's going to be back for next week's match. They actually play FaZe next week, so certainly we're going to discuss that in the coming minutes here. But yeah, hopefully Paulex gets a spot in the league. Did a fantastic job, of course, for London guys. Maybe New York is a possibility there if they want to go down that route, as we discussed last night. Firstly, this real quick before we get into the CDL stuff, the classic minimap apparently is returning here for Modern Warfare 2. Big surprise to a lot of people when 2019 it was announced that Modern Warfare was coming out. The minimap didn't work like usual. For pretty much the first time in COD history, if someone's shot, they didn't appear on the minimap. So apparently that's coming back. Not saying at all that that's going to mean it's going to play great for competitive or anything, but I suppose it's a slight positive sign just to kick the day off right here. But just before we dive into the FaZe stuff, I thought this is a pretty ridiculous statistic. Hopefully this will change quickly when they finally get around to actually updating the rules. I believe like it's meant to be in the patch. I'm pretty sure they did a patch to Vanguards that now makes it so that ticks determine who gets defense round 5. For whatever reason, the pros haven't implemented that yet. Maybe they feel like they need some time to adapt to it or whatever, but right now like the defense is so heavily favored, not just during round 5s, this is of course like 84% or so, but also during the rest of the game as well, because I mean what happens basically is that a team will try, they'll give it a go for like a minute or two to try and win their offense, and if it doesn't work then there's no point throwing the lives away. Might as well just save up the lives and try and get defense round 5. Super frustrating to watch, especially on Gavutu, and well maybe it'll turn around over time when this new update comes through, but yeah, not the prettiest stat right now for the state of this game. Let's talk about the FaZe guys then. So of course they've been having a tough time as of late. They lost in the grand finals of the major. Still, I mean, it's Atlanta FaZe. They're still making grand finals of majors. They made a great run through the losers bracket right there, but they almost got 3-0'd in fairness by Los Angeles Thieves to go top 6. So their last few series of Call of Duty have not been all that impressive, to be honest. The way they lost to OpTic in the grand finals as well. They won a few good search and destroys. Feel like OpTic honestly kind of threw away some of those maps. In fairness, OpTic got pretty lucky right in the Gavutu control, for example, with the Arcitys whole situation that went down there. But in general, FaZe were clearly the second best team on the day. And then yesterday they come up against Seattle Surge, certainly a team that's had their number right for the last few times they've played them at Major 5 at the Kickoff Classic and now here in the Major 2 qualifiers, and they lose once again. And honestly, they lose a series that really they should not have lost. They win the game 1 on Bacage. Like game 2, like they had so many first bloods, they shouldn't have lost that map. Game 3, they got arguably very lucky to still win it, given the choke that really happened at the end of that game. And then game 4, they got completely outplayed, as do they game 5. So, and that's to a team like Seattle Surge that lost to Paris like at last week or so, right? So kind of crazy, right? It seems like FaZe do match up very badly against Seattle in general, but also FaZe are just not quite where they need to be right now, which is you know, a bit of a surprise right coming into the season. We thought, okay, are they going to be as dominant as they were last year? That seemed unlikely, but already it seemed like, okay, is this team actually going to win an event this season? You would imagine they still would, but it's certainly something up for debate. This I also wanted to touch on because I mentioned it in last night's recap, but I didn't really go into detail on this because I think some people were considering this to be something of kind of a close to unintended line of sight type situation. Because as you can see, the way Cellium gets up on this, it's not like there is potentially a ledge to stand on here, right, when he jumps on, but it feels like this is kind of a glitch spot, right? It doesn't feel like this is intended, right? Which is, you know, who knows? Is it intended? Is it not intended? You can stand on something, so it's coded into the game. So it is very reminiscent, if you guys are OGs of the scene in Black Ops 3, when Clayster got disqualified for using what was called an unintended line of sight back on Stronghold Search and Destroy way back in the Pro League in the day, and they got disqualified from that series. So you do wonder, like, especially because FaZe lost this series anyway, whether the CDL come through and say, actually, this spot isn't allowed, and if someone's caught using this, because it doesn't really feel like they can, I mean, can Cellium even get seen from here? Can he actually get counter shots? Like, maybe he can, but like, still, if that spot's so strong, then maybe the CDL have to take a stand here and say, look, this isn't allowed. I don't necessarily blame Cellium for using it in this case, just because it seems like there kind of is a ledge there, and even though it might be a glitch spot, it's an interesting one, right? I don't know what your guys' sort of thoughts on that one are, but I do wonder if the CDL come out to make a ruling on something like this, just because maybe we don't want everyone abusing this in every single game from now on. So the FaZe guys say themselves some of the issues they're encountering right now. Arcitys says, we're so inconsistent it's annoying. He actually goes on to say something that I thought was quite interesting. This game is so frustrating for me, it's hard to have fun on it. This is something we talked about before the season began, that generally it seemed like FaZe were not the team that really enjoyed playing this game the most. We kind of felt like right at the start of the season, even in the early online practices, that they weren't really having a good time playing this game, which seems to be continuing. And if that's the case, it doesn't really lend too well for them to make a crazy comeback. The talent they have on their team is absolutely absurd, and I'm sure sure they will still turn things around and get crazy good results. But, you know, on the current level, you do have to wonder where they're going to be in 2-3 months' time. Right? Will they have won an event at that point? How are things going to be going? Plenty of work for this team to do, of course, and even as Simp goes on to say, GG Seattle lost 2-3. Honestly, terrible Call of Duty of us. Thanks for the support. So, like, generally, when FaZe lose series like this, at least last year, like, they would sometimes lose series, right? It happened pretty rarely. It would sometimes happen. They would go back to the drawing board. They'd really think about their gameplay. They'd go super hard for the next couple of weeks of practice, and then they would come through and dominate absolutely everyone. Now, will that happen again? I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure it will, just based on the kind of matches and the schedule they have this stage. It's not easy for them at all. Their final match is against OpTic, and already you're talking about some potential crazy seedings they might get coming into the major. So, you know, put themselves in a difficult spot here with the defeat to Seattle Surge. We'll look at their matchups here in a second, but I definitely wanted to talk about what was being discussed on the flank last night, because, you know, of course, aBeZy made this take a couple of days ago, that he reckons FaZe is still the #1 team in the game, even after OpTic beat them, and his kind of argument was, okay, look, he reckons that FaZe match up against the rest of the league better than OpTic do, even if OpTic right now in the head-to-head might have some sort of favourable matchup. And, well, as Simp says in the chat last night, you know, I'm terrible right now, gotta bring it back, says Simp, and then he goes on to say, you know, shut up, Ben, we are gonna bring it back regardless. So, Simp confident they can turn this one around, but Ben was basically making the argument, like, look, the last 5-6 series that FaZe have played, they've really looked nowhere near their level. But then X goes on to say, look, he still reckons right now they're the #1 team in the game.
This trio of Alec, Arcitys, Simp, and aBeZy have been together for a long time. And these last like 5 or 6 matches, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, is probably the worst, some of the worst COD collectively those three have played. Like in terms of pure like
5 or 6 matches.
Crazy situations. Bro, they've been dominant for so long. Think about it since they've been teaming together since like CWL London.
Yeah, they've been dominant for 2 years.
Wait, what do you mean though? 5 or 6 matches? I would say literally this match and the grand final.
Bro, but no, but think about all the series they played on Sunday. They blew that S&D was against London.
Bro, like I said, this should have been a 3-0 FaZe. Yes, FaZe need to be better. We've been talking about it. Simp is a big catalyst on that team that needs to improve. He showed light at the major of how good he can be when he's on. They just haven't figured it out in a consistent level. But this is still the #1 team in the game, and they have been for years.
Watching them play, do you think they're the #1 team in the game right now? There was a stretch last year where they were playing really poorly. They're grinding out game 5s. There's a stretch in Modern Warfare.
In Modern Warfare, they were winning all their game 5s.
They were grinding out game 5s and round 11s. But this year, I've noticed they've just been the end of these series and the endurance factor. They just run out of gas and they're horrible. Like that's a big warning sign for me that they got to work on. Like there are going to be days you're going to come on and the gun skill's not going to be there, teamwork's not going to be there. But as like a team that's got a lot of rings, you should be able to figure out and grind out the series. And right now, they don't have that in them.
So in my opinion, this is the issue with what aBeZy has to say. And I know people are getting very frustrated watching this, right, and just kind of listening to it in general. It's because, look, aBeZy made a fantastic take, I think, when Seattle Surge were good at the kickoff, that they weren't actually as good as people thought they were going to be. And when they fell off, like he's kind of, well, made that point many times over, right, that he was right on Seattle not being quite as good. Then he makes this take, right, when they made this tier list. Ben and Zuma agreed that OpTic were the #1 team. He reckoned FaZe was still the #1 team. They kind of overruled him, right, and FaZe got #2, but he was very confident that FaZe still are the best team in the world, as he even is after this series defeat last night. And the thing is with aBeZy, I don't really think he wants to admit in any case that he could ever possibly be wrong, right? Like once he's made this opinion that FaZe are #1 and Seattle are a garbage tier team and they need to make some changes, then anything kind of counteracting to that, like he's going to go pretty hard to defend his opinion to the hilt, to be honest. And whatever you think about his perspective, right, and whether his points are valid, like I think just the way he came across last night was frustrating to a lot of people. There was a lot of talking over people. There was a lot of just, you know, like kind of screaming about the discussion. I don't know. I thought it was frustrating to watch, let's just say. Regardless of whether he's actually correct or not on this issue. And who knows, maybe in a few weeks' time we'll prove that aBeZy is actually bang on the money again, and Seattle are still a bad team and FaZe are winning championships once again. And I'm sure aBeZy will be letting everyone know that on the flank if and when that does happen. But to me, it doesn't seem all that likely right now. I think FaZe are significantly behind where they need to be if they want to take down OpTic on a consistent basis. They already look pretty bad in the head-to-head matchup there. And yes, they did a great job running through the lower bracket in the major, but they still don't have the easiest time ahead of them because currently they're 0-1. Their 4 remaining matchups here in Stage 2 qualifiers are the following. So they play London next week. They also play Toronto next week. So those 2 matches are far from easy, right? Those are 2 of the top 5 teams in the game they play. Then they play Florida at the start of week 3. That's always like, you know, the Florida series arguably similar to the Seattle one. I think FaZe win it, no problem. It could be an interesting matchup actually because FaZe are very good at Bacage hardpoints. So are Florida, right? So who knows? If Florida win a Bacage against FaZe, then things are all up in the air. And then they play OpTic the final series. So realistically, they're playing 3 of the top 5 teams in the game outside better themselves, and they've already lost to Seattle, and they're playing Florida, so not the easiest time to get this back on track. And I do wonder, right, how the rest of the season goes, because who knows? Like, we talked about FaZe coming into this year. Could they be as dominant? I think they still will probably win one championship this year or something along those lines. I just don't think they're going to be as dominant this year as they were last year. Like, last year, they just weren't losing series like this. And look, if they really turn things around and push forward with some serious momentum, then yes, it can happen. But just watching this team when they get to kind of round 5s, like game 5, stuff like this, it just doesn't look as convincing as it did last year, for example. Ben was making the point they're pretty good in game 5s. Last year, I think they were 8-8 or something. But I mean, especially in the year before in Modern Warfare, they were pretty much undefeated in their game 5s. It's ridiculous what they were doing towards the end of the year. A few little lineman cards here before we talk about the matches coming up later today. These are the New York ones here from stage 1. Not pretty at all, right? I mean, Hydra, Clayster kind of technically leading the line. But yeah, Royalty and Neptune had a very hard time. We also look, I'm pretty sure he posted the Paris ones as well. But yeah, these were the Seattle ones, of course, after their victory yesterday. This just for the Major 1 stats, right? And technically Mack the lowest rated player, but yesterday I think he was on fire, honestly, for these boys. Here we go then. Let's talk about the matches coming up today, because with FaZe out of the picture right now, we've got to talk about OpTic, the number 1 team in the game. I think is quite clear to most people, I would say, right now, playing up against LA Thieves. You pretty much got embarrassed yesterday by London Royal Ravens, even with the substitute in the roster. This is the schedule then we are going to be looking at. So, Minnesota play Paris game 1. Like, interesting series. Both teams lost their matches yesterday. I think Minnesota should be favourites here, to be honest. Like, Paris looked pretty terrible yesterday, to be honest. Maybe they turn things around. But, you know, Paris are just one of these teams that still, if they ever win a series, they obviously didn't win yesterday, but if they ever win, I just have no faith they're going to win the next one. Like, I just don't see this team ever putting like 2 series wins in a row together. Maybe they will at some points, but still, they lost yesterday anyway. I still think they're going to lose here today. Then we've got New York versus the Florida Mutineers. When I see series nowadays, I try and like throw in one hot take somewhere or other among the 3 matches predictions, but today it's kind of difficult to do so, right? Because I just don't really see New York winning this. I feel like they know right now that they're going to need some more changes. Like, surely they know this team of 4 is not going to be the team of 4 they're going to have at champs this year. It's just when you know that, like, it just doesn't feel great. Florida might still think that's the case, even though it might be unlikely, who knows? Like, I still think they can win this series. I'm going to say Florida win this 3-1. I don't know if New York win a hard point here, to be honest. If they chal up on Bacage, it's going to be chalked. Who knows? Maybe they play a Berlin and manage to win it. You know what? The hot take of the day is going to be that New York are going to finally win a hard point today. That's the hot take, but I still have Florida winning this series 3-2. Then the final series, OpTic versus Los Angeles Thieves. This one, honestly, like, should be a bit of a no-brainer, to be honest. LA Thieves playing out of LA. Like, I think the server might not be so great for them against the Texas teams in general, but yeah, I think maybe the CDL can deal with that now to some degree. But anyway, OpTic are just the better team across all game modes, to be honest. The scary thing for Thieves in this matchup right now is the fact that their Search and Destroy has not been great, but OpTic's respawns were out of control. When they played FaZe in the grand final, they won all the respawns and the final search. They lost 2 of the searches, but LA Thieves probably can't win a search of OpTic right now, which makes me think there's no way really that Thieves can win this series, at least if OpTic play to their level. So yeah, I'm going to take, honestly, OpTic 3-0, but there's always that kind of chance that Kenny just comes out of nowhere and drops a 1.5 and wins it for them. And Envoy versus OpTic is always a pretty hot matchup as well, but I think now is probably time OpTic get revenge for their loss of the Kickoff Classic. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit a like button. Tells the YouTube gods this is a good video. I just like you should see it as well, and help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always. Take care, and I will see you next time.